Chapter 6. I hid my net behind a big lilac bush in Grandma's front yard, walked around the house, and came in through the back door. That was the quickest way to the kitchen, and I dearly loved that part of the house. I could never remember a time when I walked into Grandma's kitchen that I didn't get something to eat. I had one of the best little grandmas a boy ever had, but she worried about me too much. She was always worrying about my health and my schooling and anything else you could think of. Grandma was a pretty good doctor, too. No germ could escape her eagle eye. About 3 times a year, she would take time out from her work and give me a complete examination. While these examinations were taking place, I'd have to stand perfectly still with my head thrown back and with my mouth open like any angry turtle. Grandma would look at my teeth, my tongue, and my tonsils, and way down into my throat. After she'd given my insides a good looking over, then she'd look me over on the outside. She'd peel back my eyelids, look at my eyeballs, peer down in my ears, and punch around on me with her fingers. About the only thing Grandma could ever find wrong with me would be a few dirty spots. It made no difference if Rowdy and I had been swimming in the river all day long. Grandma could usually find a little bit of dirt on me somewhere. I never could understand how it was still there. I didn't mind those examinations so much. It was the standing still part that always got the best of me. I just never could stand still for very long. Grandma was over at her cupboard, putting something in a basket when I walked into the kitchen. She turned, looked at me, frowned, and said, "I declare, J. Barry, I believe you're getting skinnier and skinnier. Don't you ever eat anything?" "Eat anything?" I said. "Why, Grandma, I eat everything I can get my hands on. You know that." "I know," Grandma said, "but it doesn't seem to be putting any meat on your bones. Why, you look like a fishing pole." I laughed and said, "Oh, Grandma, I know I'm a little skinny, but I don't think I look like a fishing pole. Do I?" Grandma smiled and said, "Well, maybe not exactly like a fishing pole, but almost." "Being skinny doesn't count, Grandma," I said. "It's being hard that counts, and I'm as hard as a flint rock." I pumped up one of my arms and said, "If you don't believe me, I'm hard. Just feel my muscle." Grandma came over very tenderly, pinched my muscle between her 2 fingers. "Well," she said, "it is hard all right, but there's not much of it there. It's not much bigger than a quail's egg." This hurt my feelings a little bit. Looking down at my arm, I said, "Oh, Grandma, my muscle's bigger than a quail's egg. If it got any bigger, I couldn't carry it around." Grandma smiled and said, "I'll bet a piece of huckleberry pie and a glass of milk would help build those muscles a little bit. Don't you?" "Oh, it sure would, Grandma," I said. "The huckleberry pies that you bake would put muscles on a grapevine." Grandma chuckled and said, "I'm not interested in putting muscles on any grapevines, but I would like to see yours puff up a little more." While I was eating, Grandma said, "How's your little sister getting along?" My mouth was so full of huckleberry pie, I had to swallow 4 or 5 times before I had enough room to say anything. Oh, I guess she's all right, Grandma," I said. "You know how Daisy is. She's always laughing and singing and hopping around on that old crutch. You couldn't tell if anything was wrong with her or not." Looking concerned, Grandma said, "J. Barry, I don't think your little sister's as happy as she lets on. She just doesn't want to worry anyone. I'll bet if the truth were known, she's probably in pain all the time." I didn't like to talk about Daisy's crippled leg. It always made me feel bad, and there wasn't anything I could do about it. Besides, right then, I had too many worries of my own to wrestle with. There were those monkeys to be caught, and a chance to get the pony, and a 22. I figured that was about all the worries I could take care of at one time. Grandma said, "I know that your mother and father have been saving their money, hoping to send Daisy to the hospital. Do you know if they've saved any?" "I guess they've saved a little, Grandma," I said, "but I don't think it's very much. Papa can't stand to get a hold of much money. He gave up his smoking tobacco, and Mama, she's been saving her egg money. She doesn't order anything out of the catalog anymore. They're saving every dime they can, but I don't think they've saved very much." Grandma frowned and said, "Times are so hard, it's a problem for anyone to save money. Your grandpa and I have been putting a few dollars away to help, but you know how your grandpa is. He does more credit business than he does cash business, and people can't pay their bills." I felt pretty good when Grandma told me she and Grandpa were trying to save some money too. If they were all saving their money, then sooner or later Daisy's leg would be fixed up. In fact, I couldn't see where anyone could have anything to worry about but me. Getting up from the table, I said, "Grandma, I have so many things to do. I'd better be getting home. What did you want me to take to Mama?" Picking up the basket, Grandma handed it to me and said, "I baked some fresh bread today and want to send a few loaves to her. Be careful now. Don't mash 'em." "I won't, Grandma," I said, "and thanks for the pie and milk." "Are you sure you wouldn't care for another piece of pie?" Grandma asked. I patted my tummy and said, "Oh, no thanks, Grandma. I think that'll hold me until I get home." I had more than enough room for another piece of Grandma's pie, but with all of those monkeys hopping around in my head, I just couldn't think too much about eating. On my way home, I decided I'd try out my net on something that was alive. There were plenty of rabbits, chipmunks, and birds to try it on, but every time I poked the net out toward one of them, it would scare them half to death. They took off like they were leaving the country for good. I finally gave up and decided I'd wait until I got home to catch something. We had all kinds of things around our farm that weren't scared of anything like a little old net. Not wanting to answer a lot of questions from Mama and Daisy about my monkey catching net, I hid it under the front porch before going in the house. Mama and Daisy were in the kitchen fixing supper. Setting the basket on the table, I said, "Mama, Grandma baked some bread today, and she sent you some." "Oh, that was nice of your Grandma," Mama said. "Did you thank her for the bread?" I thought for a second, and I said, "I don't know, Mama, but if I did or not. She gave me some pie, and I thanked her for that, but I could have forgotten to thank her for the bread." With a hurt look on her face, Daisy said, "Jay Berry, you should be ashamed of yourself. Grandma's been so good to us, and you can't even thank her for when she gives us something." "Aw, now, Daisy," I said, glaring at her, "don't make it sound like I burned the barn down. I didn't do it on purpose. I just have so many things on my mind, I can't think straight anymore." "It's those monkeys," Mama said disgustingly. "That's what it is. I suppose you and your grandpa have it all figured out, how you're going to go catching them." "We sure have," I said. "Grandpa really came up with a good idea this time." "How are you going to catch them?" Daisy asked. "With a net," I said. "A net," Daisy said. "What kind of net?" "Oh, it's just a net on the end of a long pole," I said. "It opens and shuts." Daisy giggled. "Jay Berry, you're going to keep messing around with those monkeys and they'll catch you," she said. "That's what's going to happen." Daisy giggled. Mama laughed and said, "That's probably what'll happen." "Go ahead and laugh," I said, heading for the door. "I hope it won't be so funny when I catch those monkeys and make all that money, and I'm going to catch 'em. You just wait and see." Very disgusted with the women in our family, I went and got my net, called Rowdy, and headed for the barn lot. "Come on, Rowdy," I said. "Let's see if we can catch something with this net." I had no trouble finding something I could try to catch in the net. We had 7 geese, 6 hen geese, and 1 old gander. I found them out behind the barn, scratching around in the dirt. It was easy to get along with the hen geese, but it was different with the gander. He was the meanest old goose that ever honked a honk, and Daisy had named him Gandy. As far back as I could remember, Gandy and I had been bitter enemies. He was a sneaky old goose, always coming up behind me and trying his best to twist a chunk of meat out of my sitting down place. I'd plotted to do away with Gandy a dozen times, but in some way he always survived every one of my plans. The nearest I came to doing away with Gandy was the time I came in from fishing and leaned my pole up against the house. I'd forgotten and left a nice fat worm wadded up on the hook. Gandy found the juicy tidbit and swallowed it. Worm, hook, line, and sinker, and all. We had no goose doctors in the country, and all Mama could do was cut the line and let Gandy fare for himself. For about a month, Gandy walked around with a stiff neck. Every time he honked, he would jump straight up about 3 feet. He was a tough old goose, though. I have to say that much for him, because he lived after swallowing the fish hook and got meaner and meaner. Rowdy hated every feather on Gandy's body. In the summer, when it'd get too hot for Rowdy to sleep under the house, he'd go out in our yard in the shade of the red oak trees and dig himself a sleeping hole down in the ground where it was cool. This would please Gandy very much. He would honk his delight to the 4 winds, walk around as though he wasn't paying any attention until Rowdy got comfortable and went to sleep. Then he'd sneak in and get Rowdy by the tail or one of his long, tender ears. Every time this happened, there would be a terrible fight, and goose feathers would fly everywhere. Gandy had been in so many fights he was scarred up like the back alley tomcat, which didn't seem to help his meanness at all. He would get up in the morning looking for a fight, and when he went to bed, he dreamed about fighting. He was just a mean old goose, and that's all there was to say to that. Rowdy, I'd say, eyeing Gandy, I think this is a good time to get even with that old goose for all the times he's pecked us. Don't you? Rowdy seemed to understand that I was planning some kind of trouble for Gandy and was very pleased about it. Holding the pole out in front of me as far as I could reach, I pulled the yellow ring, darted in, slapped the net over Gandy, and jerked the blue ring. At first, Gandy wasn't too scared. He thought it was just another fight and started fighting back at the net. He hissed and he pecked and he honked. He beat at the net with his wings and flounced all over the place. Holding on to the pole and grinning like a possum eating briars, I said to no one in particular, "Boy, Grandpa was right. If I ever got a monkey in this thing, I sure would have him." It didn't take Gandy long to realize that whatever it was that had a hold of him wasn't going to turn him loose and was much more than he could handle. He got scared then and let out a honk that sounded like a foghorn with a bad cold. Rowdy must have known that a storm was brewing. He took off for the house as fast as he could run and disappeared under the porch. By this time, Gandy was sure that his little goose world was coming to an end, and he was very unhappy about it. I was so pleased about how my net had worked, I didn't think about being scared until old Rowdy ran out on me. Jerking the yellow ring, I started to dump Gandy out of the net. I saw right away that was impossible. Gandy had gotten his feet and head through the mesh in the net, and the rest of him was so tangled up in the cord that I couldn't dump him out. I even tried to shake him out of the net and couldn't. Regardless of how ugly and mean Gandy was, the hen geese must have thought a lot of him. On hearing his call for help, they started hissing and honking. Then, as if they had all made up their minds at the same time, They lowered their bills within an inch of the ground, and here they came to Gandy's rescue. I was kicking at the hen geese with both feet and trying my best to get rid of Gandy when I heard a noise behind me. Looking over my shoulder, I saw it was Daisy. She took one look at what was going on. Her mouth and eyes flew open at the same time. "Jay Barry," she shouted, "what are you doing to Gandy?" "I'm not doing anything to that old fool, but trying to turn him loose," I shouted back. "Mama, Mama," Daisy yelled, "you better come quick. Jay Barry's killing old Gandy." Oh, I heard the back door slam and Mama came running, wanting to know what the world was going on. "Look, Mama," Daisy shouted, pointing with her hand. "Just look at what he's doing." Gandy was making so much racket with his hissing and honking and flapping around, it took Mama a few seconds to figure things out. Then she yelled at me, "Jay Barry, what on earth are you doing? You turn that goose loose." "I'm trying to turn him loose, Mama," I shouted. "Can't you see that?" Mama could see that Gandy was tangled up in the net. "Well, hold him still," she shouted. "He's going to kill himself." "I can't hold him still, Mama," I shouted. "He's gone crazy." Daisy was almost bawling. "You'd go crazy too," she shouted, "if somebody caught you in that silly old net." "Oh, for heaven's sakes," Mama said. "Something has to be done." Closing her eyes and turning her head sideways, she darted in and grabbed Gandy up in her arms, net and all. This scared Gandy more than ever. He figured that he was surely headed for the pot and was telling the whole wide world that he didn't like it at all. By the time I was so scared, I couldn't even run. I just stood there holding on to the pole, waiting for what I knew was coming from Mama. Working together, Mama and Daisy unwound Gandy from the net and turned him loose. Gandy didn't even wait to get his breath. He ran faster than I had ever seen him run for up 10 feet. Then he took to the air. He sailed around the barn, up and over the house and the red oak trees, honking every foot of the way. He sailed on down over our fields and disappeared in the river bottoms. For several seconds after Gandy had faded out of sight, we stood in silence and stared at the spot where he had disappeared. With her black eyes shooting fire, Mama turned to me and said, "Jay Barry, I hope you're satisfied. We've just lost the best goose we've ever had." "Oh, Mama," I said in a quavering voice, "that old goose wasn't hurt. He'll be back. You couldn't make him stay away from these hen geese." "No, Gandy won't be back," Daisy wailed. "He won't ever come back. And I don't blame him one bit, Jay Barry. I don't know about you. I just don't know." "I know one thing," Mama said in her hard voice. "If you don't get rid of that net, young man, you're going to be in a worse fix than Gandy is. Now you better believe that." I did believe Mama too. I believed every word she said. Just then, Papa came in from the field, riding one of our mules. "What's going on?" he asked. "I've never heard so much racket." "It's Jay Barry, Papa," Daisy said. "He scared old Gandy clean out of the country." Papa looked at me and said, "I saw that goose, but I didn't think it was one of ours. I thought it was a wild one. He was really traveling. What happened anyway?" "Oh, nothing happened, Papa," I said. "Grandpa gave me this net to catch monkeys. I wanted to see how it'd work, so I tried it out on Gandy." Papa looked at the net. As he got down from the mule's back, he laughed and said, "I don't think we have to worry about Gandy not coming back. He's scared now. But he'll get over that, and he'll come looking for those hen geese." "That's what I tried to tell Mama and Daisy, Papa," he said. "But you can't tell them anything. They think Gandy is clear over in Arkansas by now. Papa laughed. I don't think Gandy has made it to Arkansas yet, he said. But if he keeps on going like he was the last time I saw him, it won't take him long to get there. The way Papa was laughing and making a joke out of everything, I didn't think it would hurt if I laughed a little too. I never should have laughed right then because it made Mama madder than ever. Jay Berry, she snapped, you won't think it's so funny if I make you go to your room, do without your supper. This scared all the laughter out of me. If there was one thing I dreaded, it was having to stay in my room. I would much rather have been hung by my heels to a white oak tree. Mama, I said in desperation, you can't make me go to my room now. I have to go down to the bottoms tonight and dig a hole. I thought Mama would really have a fit when I said that. Dig a hole? She shouted in a loud voice. Jay Berry, you're not going down in those bottoms at night to dig any holes. Why, who ever heard of such? But I have to, Mama, I pleaded. That's the only way I ever catch these monkeys. Mama must have seen that I was desperate. I can't see where digging a hole could have anything to do with catching monkeys, she said. But if you're so all-fired set on it, you can go down there tomorrow and dig it. But you're not going tonight, and that's all there is to it. It wouldn't do any good to dig the hole in the daytime, Mama, I said. That big monkey'd see me, and he's so smart I wouldn't have a chance of catching one of them. I have to dig it at night while the monkeys are asleep. Daisy squealed with laughter as she took off to the barn. Jay Berry, she said, if you dig that hole, those monkeys will push you in and cover you up. Sure is shooting. Now, there she goes again, Mama, I cried, laughing and making fun of me. Why don't you make her stop? If there was one thing that could help Mama get over her mad spells, it was to hear Daisy laugh. Jay Berry, Mama said, your little sister is not making fun of you. If she wants to laugh, you let her laugh, and don't you say anything about it. Before I could say anything, Papa stepped in and said to Mama, now hold on just a minute. I think you women are carrying things a little too far. I can't see anything wrong with a boy wanting to catch a few monkeys. Looking at me, Papa said, what's this about digging a hole? I explained the plan Grandpa had come up with to catch the monkeys. Taking the net from me, Papa looked at it and said, what are these rings and strings for? That's what works the net, Papa, I said. When you pull the yellow ring, it opens, and the blue ring closes it. Papa started pulling first one ring and then the other. I saw a pleased look spread over his face. Say, I think you've got something this time, he said. Did you have any trouble catching candy in it? Heck no, Papa, I said. I had Gandy caught before he knew what was happening. I believe it's the very thing for catching those monkeys, don't you? Still jerking at the rings and watching the net open and close, Papa said, it looks to me, if you could catch a goose in it, you could surely catch a monkey. I'll tell you what, let's have some supper, and I'll go down in the bottoms with you and help dig that hole. Mama gasped as if she'd swallowed too much air. Looking at Papa like she couldn't believe what she had heard, she snapped, maybe we'd just quit farming and start catching monkeys. Papa laughed and said, that may not be a bad idea. We could probably make more money catching monkeys than we could farming. Daisy had overheard Mama and Papa. She poked her head around the corner of the barn and said, Jay Berry, if you and Mama and Papa catch those monkeys, I'll hold the sack for you. This seemed to fix everything. Mama and Papa started laughing at Daisy. I was feeling so good about Papa going with me to dig that hole, I laughed a little too. Right after supper, while Papa was putting some coal oil in the lantern, I went to the tool shed and got a pick and a shovel. It might be a good idea to take the axe along, Papa said. We may run into some roots while we're digging the hole." "Hadn't thought of that, Papa," I said. "We'll run into some roots all right. You can't dig an inch in those bottoms without running into roots. I know, because old Rowdy and I have tried to dig rabbits out of their holes down there." All excited, I ran and got the axe. As we were leaving the house, Mama and Daisy came out on the porch to see us on our way. Mama was still in good humor. She laughed and said, "I hope no one sees my husband down in the river bottoms at night digging a hole. What would you tell people?" "I'll just tell them we're looking for a pot of gold," Papa said. "Then everybody in the country will be digging holes. How will that be?" Daisy squealed her delight and said, "Jay Berry, you better be careful. If you wake those monkeys up, they might get mad and run you clean out of the country." I wanted to say something back to Daisy, but I figured that as long as Mama was in good humor, I'd better leave well enough alone. So I just walked on like I hadn't even heard what she had said. Old Rowdy thought we were going possum hunting, and he was raring to go. He came over, reared up on me, and all but busted my eardrums with his deep voice. It was one of those warm, full moon nights when it's so bright it's more like twilight in the evening than nighttime. Thousands of lightning bugs were dancing, a flickering rhythm all around us. Overhead, I could hear the hissing whistles of feeding bats as they dipped and darted in the starlight sky. From deep in the river bottoms, an old hooty owl was asking his age-old question over and over. Who are you? Who are you? If Papa hadn't been with me, I'd have answered him by saying, "I'm the Booger Man. I'm coming to get you." That always seemed to shut old Hooty up. "Feeling big and important," I said. "Papa, it sure is pretty night, isn't it?" "Yes, it is," Papa said. "Nights like these are good for planting. The soil gets warm and mellow. Everything you plant will pop up out of the ground before you know it." Right then, I wasn't interested in any old green thing popping up out of the ground. I was interested in monkeys, ponies, 22, things like that. Papa said, "It's going to be a lot darker in the bottoms than it is out here in the fields. Do you think you can find that monkey tree?" "Oh, sure, Papa," I said. "I could find that monkey tree if I had a cotton sack over my head. You just follow me." It wasn't as easy finding the tree as I thought it would be. Several times I got on the wrong trail, but I finally found it. Setting the lantern down on the ground, Papa said, "Where do you think we should dig the hole?" "Oh, anywhere, Papa," I said, looking around. "One place is as good as another, just so it's close to that old bur oak tree." Picking at a small opening in the underbrush, Papa raked the dead leaves and sticks to one side with the shovel and started digging. Every time Papa ran into a root, he would rest a while. I hacked away with the axe. The rich black soil was soft and easy digging. In no time, we had a good-sized hole dug. "Climbing out of the hole," Papa said. "How does that look? Do you think it's deep enough?" I looked over and said, "There's one way to be sure, Papa. Rowdy and I will get down in it and see how it fits." Papa chuckled and said, "Do you think you can get Rowdy down in the hole?" "Oh, I won't have any trouble doing that, Papa," I said. "Old Rowdy will just do about anything I ask him to do. There's only one thing he won't do. He won't help me fight Wasp Nest. He won't have any part of that." Still chuckling, Papa said, "Well, you can't hardly blame him for that." I got down in the hole and called to Rowdy. "Come on, boy," I said. "You may as well get used to this hole because we might be sitting in it for a long time." During the past few days, I'd asked Rowdy to do just so many things he had never done before that he didn't know straight up from straight down. Standing on the rim of the hole and peering down at me, He started whining and whimpering and fidgeting around. Then he just hauled off and jumped clean over the hole and looked at me from another angle. I could hear Papa chuckling in the darkness. "Oh, Rowdy," I said, "what's the matter with you? Surely you're not scared of this little old hole. Why, you'd have your nose in every hole in these bottoms. Come on now." Whimpering like he was getting ready to swim the ice-cold waters of the river, Rowdy got down on his belly, slid off into the hole, and sat down by my side. "I'm sorry, boy," I said, patting his head. "I know I've got you all mixed up, but in the morning I think you'll understand what this is all about." "Well, what do you think?" Papa asked. "It's just right, Papa," I said, "but there's one more thing we have to do." "What's that?" Papa asked. "Climbing out of the hole," I said. "Grandpa thinks it would be a good idea to cover the top of this hole with brush so those monkeys can't see me from the treetops." "That won't be hard to do," Papa said, reaching for his pocket knife. Papa started cutting brush while I carried it over and arranged it over the top of the hole. Knowing how smart that $100 monkey was, I took the shovel and scattered the fresh dirt that had come from the hole. After everything had been taken care of, Papa held the lantern up so we could get a better look at our work. "I don't care how smart those monkeys are," Papa said. "They'll never spot that hole. Why, if I didn't know it was there, I'd probably fall into it myself." At that moment, no big game hunter in Africa could have felt more sure of himself than I did. "Papa," I said, "I really believe I'll catch some of those monkeys this time. I really do." "I do too," Papa said. "What time do you intend to be here in the morning?" "I'd like to be here before sunup, Papa," I said. "In that case," Papa said, "we'd better be getting home so you can get some sleep."